Hello, gorgeous humans. Welcome back to Iconic, the podcast with myself, Lynda Stretton, and one of my beautiful clients, friends, someone that I've been a client of as well. It's like a mutual two-way relationship. The beautiful Janelle, who is an empowerment coach. And I'm so excited for this conversation. Janelle is just like super multi-talented, multi-qualified, like lived multiple lives in a short space of time. Like her story's like really deep and empowering and amazing. The tools that she uses with her clients are incredible. I've been on the receiving end of them. So we're just going to kick off. I'm going to let you speak, Janelle. So talk to us about who you are, what you do, and how you got to doing this type of work in the world.
Okay. Hi. What an introduction. So I guess we'll start with how I got to what I do, and then I'll just kind of go from there, like give you guys some background. So when I was a child, I actually grew up with my father and my mother living in a trailer, and we didn't have a lot of money. And we're also, like, my dad is of an immigrant descent, so we're Puerto Rican. And my dad actually was very entrepreneurial. I kind of call him a serial entrepreneur. So he was always working on a new business. He was always starting the new thing, and he's actually done very well for himself. But because of that, I actually grew up watching that experience, and I very much so, along with a lot of other programming, I always had this mindset that like I was going to do something great, that it was possible for me, that actually I would be a failure if I didn't. So I kind of grew up with a lot of perfectionism because of it. Going more into like other programming, like I was also raised in a very Latina household, so like women had their place. It wasn't a progressive, put it that way. It wasn't a progressive household. So I had my place and women had their place, and we were supposed to have kids and raise a family and all of these things. So I definitely grew up feeling stuck. It was also a very religious household. It was a very like strict, a lot of boundaries, a lot of rules. You're not allowed to do this, you are allowed to do that. This is how you spend money. This is how you don't spend money. And because of that, I just, at a very young age, I felt like I couldn't be. I had to be kind of suppressed. I had to act a certain way, behave a certain way, and I struggled with that. I really did. There was times where I was even like at a very young age struggling with my sexuality, because I'm like, I don't want to be a girl. This is horrible. I don't want to have to do all of that and be all of that and not be allowed to do certain things or wear certain things. And I really struggled with that. But I also I'm a Cancer sun, Capricorn moon, Virgo rising. I have like no fire signs. I have one fire sign, but I believe that I am a very fiery person. I push back a lot, and fiery person I don't think is fair, because like I'm never gonna like be the one screaming.
Yeah,
no. Like I'm just not. But I had a lot of pushback. I would almost say that it was more of an earthy pushback. So like I was very rebellious. I did not want to be put in the box, told how to be, told what I was allowed to do. And for a long time that actually manifested itself in my life with self-hatred. I didn't like who I was. I didn't like what body I was in. I didn't like my lot in life, how I was supposed to be. I didn't like the religion. Like I just didn't like any of it, and I felt trapped. And at a really young age, like I want to say maybe I was 5 or 6. I don't remember how the conversation happened, but I know that it was before I went to bed, and I was sitting with my mom, and I told her that I was scared. And she was like, "What are you scared of?" I was like, "I am scared that I'm going to be old and I'm going to die and I'm not going to have done anything that I'm proud of in my life." And she was like, "Okay, that's like some really sad, deep shit for a 6-year-old. Like, what on earth?" But I remember feeling that visceral fear, like, I don't want to be trapped. Like, I want to go to India. I was like obsessed with National Geographic, all of that. So I think that deep desire and that deep longing for and fear really has been kind of an ongoing cycle in my life. I have dealt with pressure, which when we look at my human design chart, when we talk about human design, I'll explain a little bit more about how pressure actually is one of the biggest blocks for all of us,
Right.
and the different ways that it can manifest. But I had huge, huge pressure points of who I was supposed to be, how I was supposed to show up. And it was taking the joy out of my life, like even at a young age, which
Mm.
is, I think that so many children these days are, I mean, there's a lot of reason why kids are dealing with depression. Let's not even get into like nourishment and stuff, but and screens. But at a very young age, I was feeling the weight of that. And I think that like collectively, we're actually stepping into a place where we're kind of like rejuvenating and everyone's kind of coming out of that. And so
Mm.
my life work, what I feel like I'm here to do is to help people embody who they truly are, get back to their authenticity, get back to feeling empowered, and to be able to make decisions from a place of knowing who they truly are and what it is that they want, not because they've been conditioned. Because
Mm.
of that, I love using the modalities of human design. I love using the gene keys. Um, a little bit of astrology, but I'm not an astrologist like at all.
Mm.
I'm certified in human design and gene keys. So that's going to
Mm.
be more of my focus, helping people like deeply inquire to who they are authentically from childhood. Because oftentimes our littlest version of self is actually the version of self that was the most authentic and the most true. And then we judged it, we shamed it, we told it that it wasn't good enough. And
Yeah.
slowly but surely, our small child self, like, conditioned to believe all of these different things. And so, if you work with me or when you work with me, the journey is very much so one of remembrance. It's very much
Mm.
so like, and I think that that's even kind of been my life, like slowly through adulthood, going back to remembering who I truly am.
Mm.
Um, for a little bit of context on like how that came to be, um, not going into all of the childhood trauma. I'm going to start at COVID because I think that that's a place that most of us had a really big, like, shaken moment
Yeah.
of life has to change and life
Yeah.
is different. So for me, that manifested through I was feeling burnt out. I was working too much. I was exhausted. I wasn't enjoying my life.
Mm.
And maybe a few months before, I had actually slipped my hip from chronic stress. And
Mm.
so I had quit my job and I was basically required. Well, let me rephrase. I quit my side job. I was an entrepreneur and I had a wedding photography business. But during the week, I was working in restaurants and I no longer could do the restaurants. Obviously, I was still surviving. I had my wedding photography business, but my hip came out and slipped out of place and then popped back in. It was excruciating. I was like finally starting to learn about health. I was taking magnesium, I was taking valerian, like all of the things to be able to calm my nervous system and rest. Um, and then COVID hit. And I was living with my boyfriend at the time who was super not aligned, like at all. But my self worth was so low, I thought that that was the best I could do.
Yeah.
Um, and he and I were like polar opposites. So I was really struggling at the time with depression, with feeling like, why am I here? What am I doing? And then everything shut down. And now I'm trapped in this like 800 square foot apartment with this guy who I realized like was not at all a soul connection. Um, and I think that that's the first time I looked into spirituality. I He was staying up late gaming every night and drinking, and I was like, that's not my life. So I was going to bed super early and I was waking up way before him. And so we were basically living like polar opposite schedules in the same house.
Yeah.
um and that was when I started like trying meditation, doing guided meditations, doing yoga, like, which I had grown up a gymnast and all these things, so I'd done yoga, but I had never done it with the spiritual mindset. um
Yeah.
And through that process, I started recognizing, like, I had researched some inner child work, I'd researched shadow, like I was very into, and I always have been into, like philosophy and psychology and like sciences. So as I started learning about these things, I was like, oh, okay, I think that I probably have some trauma or whatever. Like my childhood definitely full of some stuff, and I know that I have some issues with self-worth. Like I know that I want to leave this partner and I don't even feel like I can.
Mm,
So this is what I'm going to start working on. And I
mm,
remember thinking to myself, I wish that there was a way that I could talk to my subconscious to change things so that way I could like control my life, because I feel like right now I have no control. I'm just doing. Like
yeah.
I want to leave and I can't. Um and it was through that I actually discovered a podcast called the Expanded Podcast, and it was all about manifestation. And I was like, I had never heard of manifestation. Honestly, I didn't even know about the spiritual world. And I was like, the spirituality, new age stuff. And I was mind blown. It's like, wait, people actually do this. You can actually talk to your subconscious. And so that started my journey. I discovered human design and astrology through that podcast, like my first episode. And so I booked like a human design reading immediately. Um, Actually, I first like looked it up through myhumandesign.com, and I like burst into tears when I read that I was a projector. I was like, fuck, I'm doomed. I'm never gonna be able to have the life that I want because I can only work 3 hours a day. I was like, it's just over. And I was devastated. I mean, I truly like, before I understood actually how liberating it was, I was just like, this is not who I am. This cannot be who I am. But there was like a part of me that was like, yeah, that's it. So it's like I felt like I was remembering something, and yet at the same time I was just like, I am doomed. This is not who I want to be. How am I supposed to be an entrepreneur or ever get out of the cycle or have anything nice? Like if I'm this like horrible 8% of the population projector status. I was like devastated. I was like, why couldn't I be like a manifestor or something? Um so fast forward, I did the human design reading, which helped a lot. I did an astrology reading, and I started really diving in headfirst into what manifestation was, how to reprogram the subconscious mind, how to, change my belief systems. And one of the biggest things that I realized my struggle was my self-worth was shit.
Mm,
Like, and I kind of already knew this. Like I knew that I
mm,
had problems. I remember a while before, like the November of the year before. Um, and right now we're talking like I'm in March. So it was like maybe 6 months before. I was in Spain with my dear friend who she and I had like all of our own crazy karmic cycles that we were working through. But in a very long story short, I found her husband for her, and we had just met him, and like I found him and I was like, this is it. She that night was like, oh my gosh, like this is it. And all of a sudden my heart just started sinking. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be alone. Like she found this person and it's like everything that she could want, and I'm gonna be alone.
mm,
Not just am I going to be alone, like nobody would ever want me.
mm,
And like realizing that I felt that, and like this, I hope this is not triggering for anybody, but like I literally felt like I had this toxic sludge in my chest, and I was like, nobody could ever want me or love me. Like I don't even know if I want me or love me.
mm,
And recognizing that when I started doing inner child work, I mean, I'm not kidding. I broke up with my boyfriend. I moved into my friend's mom's house, staying in her childhood bedroom because I moved in with her, and then she ended up going to Mexico because her husband, now husband, at the time they were just talking, from Spain, wanted to see her, and it had been a year. So I stayed with them for a few months, and then she left to Mexico and I stayed behind. Um, but when I discovered this podcast, when I discovered manifestation, I basically spent 3 months waking up at 6 a.m. So that way I could go and like try to do like research on reprogramming, try to research like, how do I fix this self-worth problem that I have? How do I stop hating myself? Like, I want control of my life, and I literally can't do that if I feel like shit.
Mm.
And so every morning at 6 a.m., I'm like sneaking out of her room and I am going downstairs into their living room where I basically just cried all morning long as I tried to like relive my trauma and like reprogram my belief systems, like all these things. Honestly, it was an excruciating process. It was beautiful, but it was really hard. Um, and then eventually she left, and then I spent literally all day, morning and night, in her room doing the same thing. I'm gonna be real. But during that process, I started noticing some small shifts. Um, I was working with Atara Valentine at the time, who's a really great, like, I don't even know, he's got like all the certifications, but he's a lovely coach at the time. At the time, he didn't have all the certifications, but I was working with him as a manifestation coach. And he was basically just like helping me, giving me journal prompts, things like that to kind of go through the self-worth stuff.
Mm.
And he gave me like books to read. He gave me all the stuff. Like, honestly, he was such a help at that time because I was such a disaster. Um, and then one day my friend called me and she was like, "Hey, you should come to Mexico. We have an extra room in this house. It's got 2 beds. You and my other friend, Erica, who I didn't really know Erica at the time, but she was like, both of you should come." I'm like, no, I'm working on my own thing. Like, I want to move to Spain. I need to save money. I don't really have a job. COVID shut down the wedding industry. Like, crazy stuff had been
Mm.
happening. Like, I couldn't
Yeah.
get unemployment because of how my business had run and the fact that I didn't have the other income stream. Like, I had all of the problems where I was like, we cannot go to Mexico. Um, I also was building out a van at the time because I wanted to live in it, so I didn't have to live in her mom's house anymore. um, and I was like, no, it's just not realistic. I have a dog. And then she said, well, you should consider it. And I was like, all right, I would only consider it if, and then I like spewed off this list of really random things that had been coming up in like my inner child journaling as like things that I wanted to be for myself. So I was like, I will come to Mexico if there is a way I can join the circus, if I can do pottery, because I want to be a potter. I want to start playing with clay. And if dogs can run free and I don't have to have her on a leash. And my friend was like, really weird, but the people who started Circus Soleil actually moved here, and so they have a circus that you can join, and dogs run free. There are no leash laws. And I was like, what about pottery? And she's like, I will get back to you. I don't think I've seen any pottery. And I was like, there's no pottery. That's not my manifestation. I was like so manifestation oriented. I was like, no, not my manifestation. So I moved on. And then a week later, she called me and she said, Janelle, pack your bags. You're coming to Mexico. And I said, why are you saying that? And she was like, the day that you and I spoke on the phone, then you said that you wouldn't come unless you had those 3 things. Someone moved into the town that we are currently in. And this is like a very small town, an hour from the airport. Like, the Wi-Fi went in and out all the time, like just very obscure. She was like, someone just moved into this town who is a potter, and she's opening a pottery studio, and it just opened today. But like, she came to town last week. And I was like, there's no way. I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to Mexico. So I packed my bags. My friend Erica packed her bags too, and I went to Mexico. Through this process, I started working on different meditations and journal prompts and all these things. I was still working with Atara at the time. But when I moved to Mexico, I was overweight. I wasn't my best self. I wasn't healthy. Let's put it that way. I hadn't exercised in a long time. I hadn't been eating healthy. And my mindset was, I'm fat. I'm gross. Also, I hope I'm not triggering people with this, but that was my mindset. And I like didn't really have like summer clothing and stuff. So it was kind of funny. Like I went to Mexico and I was like, this is weird. Like I don't feel like I fit in whatsoever. But within probably, I would say 30 days of doing different manifestation like practices and like trying different things on, like I was trying on all the hats. I started noticing that I was becoming like quite literally magnetic. And I started noticing my own subconscious like belief system shifting. And what I mean by that is like I didn't feel as undesirable as I once did. I was learning Spanish, like, which was another thing on my manifestation list. I was like, I want to learn Spanish. And so I was like doing 2 hours of Spanish every day. Like literally all of the movement and the momentum and the action was like making me feel better about myself, for one.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, like it became uncanny. I really don't know how else to explain it, but like my friend and I were walking down the street, and I'm not kidding, somebody like fell off of their bicycle staring at me. A random dude like started whistling at me. Like walking down the street, it was so uncomfortable that she looked at me and she said, whatever that energetic stuff is that you're doing, it is working, because this is weird. And I was like, it is weird. But I had no idea how to actually control what kind of attention I actually wanted. So I was like drawing in too much energy. And I was like, this is not good. So that's kind of like the beginning of the story. Obviously, I'm in a very different place now. I had to learn how to literally put out what vibes I wanted, because all the vibes are not the vibes you want. And I really like, I got to start practicing all of these different things to become more embodied and more authentic. I ended up taking up aerial silks. I like did a yoga teacher training. I started getting certified in human design. Like I started studying massage therapy, all of these different things. And I manifested a lot of things in that process. And one of the biggest things that I realized was the things that I manifested always ended up falling off, because it was coming from a place of like ego or like something that I wanted, but like I wasn't truly embodying like the things that stuck with me, that really helped, that made my life better, was my embodiment, my authenticity, my self-worth, like who I truly wanted to be. I couldn't manifest money. That was a big one. Money did not come through manifestation. Like I would grab it and then I would lose it, until I actually started doing this work and like the trauma work and the like deep remembrance work. That's what really changed things for me. So I know this was probably like a long intro.
It's brilliant. I love it.
A lot of the things that I teach people will help them manifest, but I don't consider myself a manifestation coach whatsoever, because that is not my goal and purpose. That's not going to be the long-term spiritual path that changes your life. What's really going to change your life, change your mindset, and help you to not only manifest, but manifest things that are actually aligned for you.
Yeah.
And bring in the right relationships, bring in the right job, bring in a sense of deep purpose, or even just connection to what your purpose is. Trick, it's not what you think it is, because it's not what you do. That comes when you start to like truly embody and empower yourself unto embodiment, unto authenticity. So that's a little bit of my story. That's what I like to focus on.
It's incredible, and there's so many things in that I really want to dive into, but I'm like, but so much resonated when you were talking, but I'm like, but there's so much more I want to talk about. So I'm going to keep going on that purpose thing then. So let's talk about how so just for context, like we're assuming everybody listening to this podcast has a basic understanding of human design. So I'm not going to get you to explain what human design is, all different things. Let's dive into the juicy stuff straight away. So let's talk about how people can find out more about their purpose and soul path and all the kind of stuff from their human design then.
Absolutely. So The first thing that I want to say before I go into how you can find this in your chart, is that we often think of our purpose as something external outside of ourselves. Like, my purpose is to empower people. My purpose is to be a mom. My purpose is to, start new businesses. Whatever it is that you connect with, that you feel like is the thing you're supposed to do, that's what you usually would think is your purpose. And I actually don't think that that is the case. Your purpose is you being and existing as you are supposed to be and exist. And the more that you can be authentic to yourself and do the things that you fucking want to do and be the person that you want to be, the more you will be in alignment with your purpose, because you are your purpose. Literally, from a soul perspective, your existence and your expression here on this planet is your purpose.
Yes.
So once you're able to kind of like perspective shift what your purpose is, there's a lot less pressure. There's a lot less stress on like, oh, I have to do, because you suddenly don't have to do anything. You are living your purpose right now. Your purpose is for your expression of consciousness to experience the world as you are currently living. So if you feel disconnected from your purpose, that is actually your purpose. Your purpose is to just be, to be able to rest into that, to go, man, I don't know what it is that I want, because that's what the consciousness needs to experience. But we can step into a place of high bright vibration in our purpose a lot faster when we start to recognize how we want to express and become our most authentic selves. So in your human design chart, the place that I suggest that you go first, and this is assuming that you've already looked at your energy type, your energy auric type of like manifestor, projector, generator, reflector, all of those different things. Like, once you know those basics, your conscious sun sign is going to be like the gate, or the like the energy flavor that is your purpose. So for example, I'm going to use mine as an example, and then I'm going to use Lynda as an example. Mine is gate 15 with a 1 line, or like a 1 flavor. So gate 15 sun sign is the love of extremes, or the love of humanity. And so the way that works, if I'm feeling lost, if I'm feeling out of alignment, I just have to ask myself, like, okay, where am I feeling disconnected from my authenticity? Because like the love of extremes is literally like this ability to, the gate of extremes, it's this ability to like connect with and see beauty in anything and everything, even the stuff that people are like, that's a little much. Like, case in point, go join the circus. That's my sun sign. So my conscious sun sign in gate 15 is literally like, okay, if I'm feeling out of alignment, like, where can I begin to like see what it is that's the most extreme, extra, like maybe something that I've been conditioned not to express in myself, like where can I express more of that? And then also, like, how can I love people more? How can I take the focus off of me and put it on someone else? That's how I have found my sun sign to express well with me. You can find a lot of information about that gate, either by Googling it, or if you want to, you can actually get the Gene Key book by Richard Rudd, and it gives you like, because the gene keys are all of the gates. So even though they're not identical, they're going to give you, like, human design has a slightly different interpretation. You're going to find so much information about that gate and like the energy of it just by reading the book. That's like a really affordable way to do it. I will say it's like a pretty mystical explanation, but it's very, very helpful. You can also, book a human design reading with somebody, maybe me, just to focus on what that looks like. For Lynda, it was gate 27. And if I remember correctly, it had a 6th flavor line,
It
like
did,
a
yeah.
6th profile line. And gate 27, like, is all about nurturing. It's all about like healing the collective, at least on the surface level. But as you go in deeper, it's also all about like divine feminine, going into your intuition, feeling your own empowerment, and, you know, helping other people step into that as well. So, and the fun thing is with the 6th flavor line or profile line, it's all about experimentation. So like the first half of her life, she's just going to experiment in all of the ways to do that, whether that be nourishment, whether that be female empowerment, whether that be working in corporate, um, like all of
And
those
burning
different
out
things.
for being in the
Yeah, and
masculine
burning
too
out.
much.
Exactly. And then eventually stepping into this place where you're able to guide women through breath work, through like all of the different modalities, as well as being a mom and nurturing yourself. So the sun sign, like, it's never just one way. And I think that that's also important. Like, your purpose is never going to express only in one way. It's going to express how you interpret it and how it feels right to you. So like, Lynda's sun sign doesn't doom her to now be a nutritionist forever. She can
Mm.
be if she wants to, but we are such creative, powerful like beings that there are multiple expressions and facets. We're literally like crystalline beings, so there's so many different ways that it can express. Does that answer the purpose question?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like we were having this conversation because you did a reading for me the day, and I was talking about like that nurturing thing when I've had a reading with someone before, and they kind of really like tapped onto the fact I was a nutritionist and there was some nurturing. It's like perfect, like nurturing everyone. But it's like there's so many different ways that you can nurture people and all the other different things. So yeah. So let's keep going with that, because the other thing that we worked through together, which I loved, I've never done this with anyone, and it was just incredible. I've obviously done a lot of personal development, you know, pretty screwed up person, anorexia, depression, a lot of different things going on over the years, done a lot of personal development and have done a lot of inner child stuff, but not done it in the context of human design. And you were the first person that's introduced this to me, and I loved it. And what you did was you looked at my like core wounds from like the father side and the mum side between 0 to 7, and then 8 to like 18, 16, 18, 20. You were like, it can vary a little bit between those ages. And it was, again, the thing I like what you said about the first time that you discovered it, it's just like giving you confirmation. I was exactly the same when I found it. It was just like, that is who I am, and I'm not weird. Like, and the fusion of the astrology with it as well, for me, was because I did astrology before human design. So when I was getting astrology readings, and it's like, you're this person, that person, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay. And like people saying, you know, you might have felt like you didn't fit in with your family, you and the other black sheep. And then your mum was physically around, but not emotionally available. And people start saying these things to you. And it's like, yes. And then when similar to you, when I learned I was a projector, couldn't get my head around it, because all I was hearing is work 3 hours a day and have an afternoon nap. And I'm like, I'm a manifesting generator. I work really long hours and I do all of these different things and I multitask on all different things. And it's like, actually in the deconditioning process, what I realized was actually, yeah, I was a really out of alignment projector. And as I've deconditioned and started getting my head around that thing about being the guide and, you know, helping direct other people's energy and all the different things, like it all makes complete sense. Anyway, I'm going off and on. We'll come back to energy types in a minute, but let's talk about the trauma. Let's talk about how you look at and help support people on this. And let's talk about conditioning and deconditioning as well, in case anyone doesn't understand those terms. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So first we'll just touch on conditioning and deconditioning. So conditioning essentially is going to be, it can be as simple as, my daughter wants to play and eat with her hands and try new things, and we're like, you're not allowed to touch anything except for with your spoon. Over time, she is conditioned or trained. I think a lot of people like to use the word training, that this is how you show up in the world. This is how you do things. That's like a very simple, easy to wrap your brain around method. That being said, that can transition to, you're not allowed to cry. You're not allowed to cry. You're not allowed to cry. You're a kid. You're not allowed to cry. what happens? Eventually you are conditioned as a grown man or as a grown woman, and you don't feel like you can cry. That's conditioning. And it can show up in so many different ways. For me, I had a lot of religious conditioning, like, even coming down to like, you can't join the circus because you need like the people who join the circus usually, like, they're not very good Christians. Like, they do weird stuff. Like, they're out there. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Like, why can't I be like a stretchy performer and not love Jesus? And it would be like, well, you don't understand. Like, those are very worldly people. I'd be like, huh, not resonating with me. But I was conditioned to believe that that was the case. I didn't have to decondition around that one too much because of my sun sign, but I'm just giving an example of how that could happen. People can be conditioned into shame around their sexuality. I'm gonna cough. People can be shamed into conditioning around their expression of sexuality, or even just like their permission on what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do.
Mm-hmm.
People can be conditioned to believe that they are, like, let's say you're raised by generator parents like I was,
Mm-hmm.
and you're a projector. You're going to be conditioned to believe that you have to work a 9 to 5. You're going to be conditioned to believe that you have to start a business after working the 9 to 5. You're going to be conditioned to believe that, school, the modern school system is a massive conditioning system. So this concept of conditioning literally comes down to you being told over and over and over again and shown over and over and over again how to do something, in particular when it feels out of alignment with who you are. And, conditioning isn't always something that is negative. It's not like society has been conditioning you with the intention so you can live a miserable life. I mean, there is a little bit of that depending on how conspiracy theory you are, but that's not always the case. Like, your parents condition you to look before you cross the street because they don't want you to get hurt. So conditioning can also literally be a safety mechanism. They conditioned you to believe that you have to go to school and get perfect grades and then go to college because they want you to have a better life than they did. And that's how the system worked for that generation. So that's conditioning. The process of deconditioning is going to come from, usually, I believe, finding the places in which you have experienced pain, shame, or fear. Pain, shame, where you experience judgment or you experience fear in your life, and getting down to the root of why. So let's say that you feel pain and shame around your body type or your body shape or the way that your body shows up. It's because you were conditioned from childhood as a female in the United States, or even as a male, depending on what your family is and what you grew up around, that you're supposed to look a certain way.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, if you don't feel healthy, that's different. But also your mindset, if you're conditioned hard enough, you won't feel good no matter what, because of the conditioning of what you've been shown or told you're supposed to look like.
Yeah.
That deconditioning process is going to come from, like, literally working through childhood trauma and supporting your inner child, experiencing your shadow and accepting and integrating it, and generally speaking, a lot of subconscious reprogramming and practicing doing things that are more in alignment with what you truly believe. So let's say, for example, that I discovered that I'm a projector, and I know that I literally just had slipped my hip and that I was experiencing burnout. So, like, the universe had already shown me that something was out of alignment. I cannot work 16-hour days, walking on my feet, managing a restaurant, and then also work weddings on the weekends. And yet I was so conditioned that to be able to have the big business, you have to work for somebody else as hard as you can, and then take all of your free time to work on a separate business. So that way, eventually, you can create financial freedom and, like, I don't know, have some pat on the shoulder that, like, you did a good job, you started a business.
Yeah.
That's what I believed. To decondition that, I actually, and this is not going to be everybody's journey, but I had COVID take over and literally like shut restaurants down, shut the wedding industry down. I had no job.
Yeah.
And I was like, now what? And then I found out I was a projector and I went, oh, so I'm just going to recuperate and I'm going to regain my energy. And then, you know, it's funny because my mindset was, oh, well, projectors, while we're only supposed to work like 3 hours to 5 hours a day, we can do as much as we want on like play and research and all these other things. So I like dove into like doing the yoga teacher training. I dove into doing all of the classes for pottery and aerial silks. And because I was in Mexico at the time, it was very affordable.
Yeah.
And like that was a wonderful experience. And that was like the beginning of my deconditioning process.
Yeah.
And then eventually, when I did look for a job again, I was like, I've enjoyed this so much that I'm going to continue my deconditioning process. And I'm actually going to look for a job that allows me to work on my computer from home. And at the time, I wanted part-time.
Yeah.
And so, like, that was what I looked for. That process was literally like a year and a half to get to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to work from home and I want to start a business, but I'm going to do it as a projector, which means that I don't want to be working more than a certain number of hours. I still do all of the research. I still do all of the things that feel like play that maybe could still be work.
Yeah.
But like this actual like one-on-one sharing my guidance, I only do a little bit of that per week, or at least that is the goal.
Yeah.
As a projector. So the deconditioning process is going to look different for everybody based off of their conditioning experience and your resistance levels, your subconscious reprogramming, and the access that you have. Like it might be really hard to fully decondition the whole like working 9 to 5 thing as a projector if, you know, you have a 9 to 5 that you need to work. Like sometimes the way that deconditioning can happen is like, okay, how many meetings do you actually have to be in? Or how can you allow yourself to rejuvenate more? Is there certain projects that you can delegate off at your work so that way you can do more of what you enjoy, so that way at least you're not burning yourself out doing all of the things and being a control freak?
Yeah.
Because we're the only ones who could do it right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know I'm like really touching on projectors here. We can get more into detail on some of the other ones if you want to, Lynda, but that's kind of conditioning and deconditioning. Moving over to the trauma. You can find your ages 0 to 7 trauma that you experience with your father and your unconscious Mars. So the gate that is connected to the unconscious Mars, that's going to be like your childhood trauma from ages 0 to 7. And when you look that up, you can, again, as I've said before, you can look up the gate and you can look up the flavor line if you have the access to that. Most charts that aren't like professional reading charts won't have that flavor line. So you would have to like either pay some money to like pull a professional chart, or, you know, if you have a friend or if you want to pay for a human design reading, you can get that information. But and then you can also listen to the Gene Keys book, read the Gene Keys book if you want to get a little bit more detail. So, for example, my subconscious Mars sign, which is age 0 to 7 trauma with my father on the paternal side, is in gate 61. That was all about like the rules, what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. It was this whole like, I'm stuck and I'm trapped and I'm oppressed. And then I'm seeking independence, and eventually I want to get out. Lynda and I actually have the same gate, but with different parents. So that experience for me, like realizing that was my 0 to 7, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I already knew this. And yet it was so freeing to know, like, okay, first of all, this is how it was supposed to be. This is actually the experience that my soul came here for. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with the fact that my whole life I felt like a black sheep, and I felt like oppressed. And like the fact that as a very young child, I was afraid that I wouldn't feel like I truly got to live life. Like that actually is very authentic to who I am, because it was in my unconscious Mars, was right there for me. Like this is part of the journey of what I need to free myself from and to discover and to heal from.
Yeah.
And you can find the same for your from your maternal side or your mom's side on your unconscious Venus from ages 0 to 7. And then for like age 8 to 16, you can find it in your conscious Mars and your conscious Venus. So if you look at your human design chart, you know, you have like the diagram with the triangles and the squares and all the lines. And then you'll see like a row and a row that has planetary signs and the numbers, which correlate with the gates that are activated on your chart. So the unconscious side is going to be the side to the left, and the conscious will be to the right.
Yeah, or just book a reading with Janelle and she'll talk you through it, because that's
I know it's a lot, but like if you want to do it yourself, if you're a one line, go for it.
Yeah, explore it yourself. It's funny when you said the Gene Keys book. Maybe you disagree, but I cannot handle the woman who narrates the book, so I prefer the written version. That audio, it seems like Richard Rudd's got one of the nicest voices in the world, and I'm like, why did he not narrate that book? I get it's massive, he probably didn't want to do it, but yeah.
You know, I actually, when I first got the audiobook, I was like, I made a mistake. I really didn't like her voice, but then I grew to really like it.
Okay, it might
not
just
because
be
I'm like, oh, I like her voice, but like I like I don't know, like I almost like, because sometimes the way that he writes feels a little bit nonsensical. Like I don't know if you've ever listened or like read the book, but like there's sometimes they're like the way that things are explained, you're like, this is not real. What are you talking about? And then you read through it, like, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, this does make sense. But like it can kind of feel fantastical and nonsensical at first. And so I think that her voice matches it really well.
Yeah. Well,
and I enjoy listening.
Mine talks about that humans in the future aren't going to need food as a form of nourishment. And I just switched off because I was like, this makes no sense. Of course, we run off like nutrients or any biochemical pathways and things. Like as a nutritionist, this makes no sense. So I struggled with that.
Yeah, I mean, so the struggle that I think a lot of people can have with human design and with Gene Keys is if you go in deep enough, these guys were like so next level new age, like on a psychedelic journey without the psychedelics, that they're like, their mindset and belief system is like, humans are going to evolve and come out of this crystalline structure of like needing food to eventually being able to like live off of the energy of the universe. And while it sounds fantastical, like we know that there are literally people, monks who live in like the Himalayas who live off of like a liter of milk a day, 2 liters of milk a day. And like, I'm not going to say that they're not skinny. Like, they survive. So, you know, I believe, and this is probably my gate of extremes, I believe that there is a broad spectrum of possibility. We just need to know that like we're human beings, we're physical beings, and like if you're not there yet, you're not there yet, and that's fine. If you don't resonate with that, like toss it out. All we are looking for is what is useful to help you make a transformation, so that way you feel like you're living your best life. So when you're listening to the Gene Keys, when you're listening to your human design reading, you don't need to take anything as like truth or a rule or like that doesn't make sense because this law of science. Like, is it useful? Does it help you change your perspective? Is it helping you heal? If so, great. If not, fuck it. Not for you. Move on. Like, I think that when you take that mindset, I mean, even in the the self-help space, there's just like a lot less resistance. You're going to battle a lot less. You're going to fight less. You're going to not be getting into like comment fights on social media because it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you another question, then I'm going to turn the light on for anyone watching on YouTube. But let's talk about, because we have spoken a bit about projectors, let's talk about the different human design types in business then, and how people can make the most of their energy type in business. And I'm going to mute and turn my light on and let you talk.
Okay. Okay, so I've talked a lot about projectors. So I'm actually going to not talk about projectors right now. We are going to go a different direction. We're going to talk first about manifestors, because they say that manifestors, like, okay, I'm going to give you guys some back history. Those of you who already know it, just like bear with me for a second. The oldest energy type from an evolutionary perspective is the manifesting generator. Cavemen, all of that, like literally we had to be both manifester and generator to survive, multifaceted. So manifesting generators were the first energy type on the planet. Then it split off into manifesting generator, and then we had manifestors and generators. Generally speaking, the manifestors were like the kings and the royalty, and the generators were like the worker bees, the lower population that helped support the hierarchy. And we had that like for the longest time. And then we also had a little bit later projectors come in. Projectors were like the guides. When you look into like tribal societies, the projectors were the ones who were kind of like the shaman or like the spiritual leader who was like helping the community. And then the most recent and the smallest number of population that we have, it's only like 1%, is reflectors. They were the ones who are supposed to be like reflecting back to the rest of the community, the health of the community. So like when you look at these positions, and technically in 2027, we're about to have like another shift. So I don't know like if we'll get like a new energy type or something, but for right now in 2023, manifestors are basically the ones who have an undefined center of sacral. So you're not meant to work long, hard hours, but you do get hyped up with these new ideas, with these new expressions, with these ways that you want to show up, all of these different things. And you're going to have this huge surge of energy. And during that huge surge of energy, you're going to go, 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 go. So these are like your founders. These are your vision casters. These are going to be, I like to even think of manifestors as being the creatives. Like an avant-garde designer would be like so manifester of you to like create the collection and like go wild and then be like, fuck off everybody, I'm tired, and like go off. Now, I'm not saying that that has to be your expression. Let's say that you're in corporate, you're going to be, you know, the vision caster or the founder who started the business, but very quickly you need to delegate out the work because you're not supposed to be wearing yourself out in the details. You are supposed to be creative and figuring things out and then releasing to let everyone else get on the train with you. And then you get to rejuvenate until your next big idea comes, your next big wave. That's like the very simple watered down version of manifester. If we move over to manifesting generator, there are actually two types of manifesting generators. There's manifesting generators with more manifester, and then there's manifesting generators with more generator. And so in that realm, these are going to be your people that have this manifestor energy of trying new things, bringing new things together. They're also very much so alchemists. Sometimes it's going to be just going, I'm really passionate about this instrument and this instrument. And so now I'm going to start a band using these two very obscure instruments, and it's going to be super cool. Like that's one way that you could do it. This is just a random example. It could also be, you know, I'm trying to think, like my sister's a manifesting generator and she literally speaks Japanese, Spanish, English. She's learning another language right now. She's taken surf lessons. She plays the guitar, the piano, and the bass and the drums. And she is like learning how to do video camera work for like art. And she draws, she skateboards, like all of these things. And she's good at all of them. And it blows my mind. But like, she picks them up and then she drops them and she moves to the next thing about as quickly as she picked them up. That is very manifesting generator energy. It's going to be somebody, maybe you have a lot of ideas, maybe you have a lot of different ways that you want to express. That's how you're supposed to do it. You're probably the jack of all trades. You probably have endless energy. Like, that's wonderful. That's beautiful. Keep doing the thing that lights you up and keep exploring and trying new things. That is how you're supposed to operate. So in a business realm, always allow yourself to explore the next new thing that interests you. And if you need to, if you have more manifestor in you, then you can delegate out. If you maybe you have more generator in you, there is a little bit of like, okay, I'm going to stick with this, I'm going to work through it, but you're always allowed to add something else on. And you're always allowed to say no the moment that it feels like a drain on your energy. You're always seeking energy richness. And I think that that's the same for all of the types. You're always seeking energy richness. So how do I add more energy to myself? Manifestors, they're going to chase the energy down. And then when it goes away, okay, I'm going to go retreat and I'm going to gather my energy. So that's manifesting generators. Let's say you're a more manifestor. We already touched on that. So now let's say that you're more generator, or if you are a generator. Jenna Zoe expresses generators as like the universe is your personal shopper. So it's going to like bring you like, do you like this? Do you like that? I think that that's very accurate. Generators are going to be the ones that bring the juicy energy and like excitement to the world. And like, yes, back in the day, it was oppressive. You like had to be the worker bee. Now, I don't think that it's fair to say that it's like worker bee energy. I like to think of it as energy creators. Literally, you're a generator. If the lights go out, you're going to be the one who's going to be able to shine and bring forth the excitement. Like literally manifestors and projectors and reflectors, we need your energy to be able to work off of because we don't create our own. But it doesn't mean that you're supposed to be a slave and work your ass off. It means that you are supposed to do the thing that lights you up, that brings you more energy. So like, yes, you can work your ass off and drain your battery every day doing something you don't like, or you can wake up with energy and go to bed with more energy because what you chose to do was something that brought you joy, that brought you excitement, that brought you alignment. So it's like my really dear friend Erica is a generator, and I always laugh because I'll ask her like, do you want this? And she's like, and so I have to ask her yes or no questions, like, or no, I don't say, I say like, do you want anything? And she'll be like, and then I have to like ask her yes and no questions. Like, do you want ramen tonight? No. Okay, cool. Do you want sushi? No. Spaghetti? Yeah. I'm like, all right, that's how we vibe. Generators, you're literally here to say yes and to say no. Boundaries are going to be your most magnetic way of working. In the work environment, that means only do the stuff that lights you up. If you love accounting, then like work in accounting, do not work on processes. If you are, COO and you love to manage the process and everything, then like, please do not get into the weeds and actually manage the client. Like allow yourself to do the thing as niched as you want to be or as broad as you want to be. Projectors we've talked about, you're the guide. So a lot of things are just going to be like CEO is a great position for you. HR is a great position, even just like starting your own business, but that doesn't mean that that's the only way you can do things. You could also be a researcher, like human design, projectors. We love to study and we bring in energy by learning more and by researching and all of that. The part that you want to be careful on like draining your energy from is literally like speaking verbally and guiding people. So like recoup your energy when you're done. Allow yourself to do the things that sound fun and also to do it in a way that is fun. So like maybe working from home is going to be more fun and comfortable for you and you can get, the same number of hours in just because you're working from home with a cup of tea and you can have like the TV on in the background. Maybe that would feel more aligned for you and more pleasurable than, working in a 9-to-5 cubicle. So projector, it's more about infusing pleasure into your process and allowing yourself to do more research and to allow yourself to guide people, to coach people, to mentor, whether that be in a teaching environment or, working with a team and being a team lead. There's different ways that can look. I think that the most interesting out of all of these is actually the reflector. And I think that the reflector gets overlooked a lot because they're only 1% of the population. I like to think of reflectors a little bit like chameleons. So depending on who your community is, you're probably going to find yourself embodying a lot of that. And then also, like, everything is undefined. So you're probably going to be a little bit more susceptible to the conditioning, to the pressure, to all the things. So you need a little bit more rest. You're going to need to take more time with your decision-making process. You're going to have to allow cycles to play out. And in your work process, like, I like to think of your position as being like how you are doing, how you are feeling, how you are expressing is going to literally manifest in your body. And it's going to show the rest of the company how the company is doing. So like if you feel overworked, chances are your company culture is off. If you are feeling exhausted, chances are something is off. What do you need to change? Maybe it's that you're doing too much. Maybe it's that someone that you're working with is doing too much, you know, all of these different things. So for a reflector, you can, I like to think of the reflector as like your work environment. You have the most flexibility on how you want to work, how much you want to work, what you want to do, but you need to be surrounded by people who do everything very aligned to themselves and that like resonates with you, like from a community perspective. I also think of it this way, like Atara, my coach for the longest, he's a reflector and he's an incredible therapist. Like he is now a therapist. Like that is what he does. He's not a manifestation coach. He's a therapist. And one of the reasons why he does so well is because like sitting with you, he can immediately pick up on all of your vibes and know what's going on because he's literally internalized it.
Yeah.
And then he can be like, oh, this is what I'm feeling. This is how this happened. And like, he's literally experienced because of so many different circles of people that he's been with, so many different expressions that he's been around. He can literally like absorb what it is that you're feeling. He's probably already experienced it once before, and he can help guide you into freedom. So like, he's an incredible therapist. A lot of really incredible actors are actually reflectors as well, because they're just chameleons. So, I know that there's like a lot of doom and gloom for a lot of people around being a reflector. And I actually think that that's not the case. You have the most freedom to literally pick and choose who you want to be, how you want to express what your identity is in the workplace, especially. You just want to be surrounded by the right people. So like community is going to be huge for you. Also, alone time is going to be huge for you because you need to be able to decompress. You need to be with just yourself, just your energy. So like, have your set work hours with your community and then have your set like I am by myself hours where you just get alone time, you get silence, you get to like I'm trying to think of the word, almost like draining a bathtub, like let it all out.
Yeah,
that's all the energy types.
I can't believe the time and how far. I feel like we need to do a part 2 because there's so much like there's so much I know about you and what you do and how much I want to talk about, but I'm also conscious of time.
Sure.
So
I mean, I'm down for a part 2, so just let me know.
Yeah, let's do a part 2. So on that note then, so like it feels like a really good time. Like if you want more, go and book a reading right now because there's so much more you can get. But on that note, let's tell everybody how they can find you, how they can work with you, what you have available at the moment, anything you've got coming up. And then let's reconvene for a part 2 and talk about loads of the stuff we wanted to talk about. Because we like went heavy on HD, didn't we? I know you do a lot more than that. But yeah, let's tell everyone how they connect.
Okay. So you can connect with me on Instagram, Janelle Lynne, I am. I don't know if
drop
you have
this in the show
notes.
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, do you have show notes? Because I don't want to spell it.
Yeah.
And then you can also go to my website, lilasoul.com. And those are pretty much the only places that I hang out. Like I have Facebook, I have those other things. I'm not on them. So those will be like your 2 spots. Right now, if you want to work with me one-on-one, I do human design readings and I do empowerment sessions. And then I am currently working on, and Lynda knows about this because she's been helping me, but I'm currently working on building out a course called Enough, all about self-love and empowerment onto authenticity. It is literally like my process that worked from beginning to end, like with where I'm currently at on like getting into authenticity, my self-inquiry, releasing like trauma, and like self-hatred, like all of those things. But I tried so many different modalities. So this is going to be a mix of like neural manifestation and inner child work with RRT and like all of these different things. It's kind of all mixed together. So that way you have like a really potent 12-week process, 12 step, 12 weeks to get more aligned with who you are. And it's like a rinse and repeat. So like you can do it and then you can go back through it again. And again, as many times as you want, to like help you balance your nervous system, to clear out old trauma, and to eventually be more embodied in the life that you want. It's not a manifestation course, but I'm sure that things will come to you in the process. So
be more embodied in the life you want. I love that. Yeah, let's do a part 2 in January, and we'll talk more about like what's going, because I love all that stuff. You know, I had so many. That's when I say, when you talk about intro, like I could have talked about perfectionism, self-worth, being in the wrong relationships. It's like there's so many things I want to go into. So definitely do a part 2. In the meantime, make sure you get your HD reading, your empowerment session, and then we'll catch up in the new year. Thank you so much for the incredible conversation and so much knowledge and wisdom that you just shared. Stay online, because when I stop the recording, I'll have a quick chat with you. But guys, if you love this conversation, please do share it. Give us a tag on Instagram. Let you know your greatest takeaway. We would love to know like what's come up for you, what you've learned, what you've taken out of this. So grateful for you being here, either on the listening or watching us. And we'll see you back here next week for another incredible episode. Thank you, Janelle.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.